So, coming out of last night's episode of Impact Wrestling on AXS TV, we have some interesting information when it comes to the next appearance by the AEW World Champion Kenny Omega, along with the Impact World Tag Team Champions, the Good Brothers, and Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President Don Callis, the Super Elite, the Bullet Club, whatever you want to call them, their next appearance for Impact Wrestling, because it was announced by Impact Wrestling that AEW World Champion Kenny Omega is coming back to Impact Wrestling next Tuesday night on AXS TV. Alongside Kenny Omega, of course, will be the Impact World Tag Team Champions, the Good Brothers, Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson, and as I mentioned, the Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President Don Callis. The promotion tweeted out the following, quote, AEW World Champion Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers with Don Callis will appear on Impact next Tuesday at 8/7 Central on AXS TV. Now, as it's been reported several times, we've spoken about it a million times here on the channel, Kenny Omega will team up with Gallows and Anderson to face off against Impact World Champion Rich Swann and the Motor City Machine Guns at the Hard to Kill pay-per-view, which of course is on January 16, 2021. So after 2 weeks of having these best of Impact of 2020, handing out the year-end awards, we're going to touch on those in a second, we're getting back to normal now, essentially. We're getting back to normal as to what to expect going forward when it comes to this AEW and Impact Wrestling crossover. And I understand with everything that's been going on recently, obviously, I don't know about you, but I've kind of forgotten about the whole AEW and Impact Wrestling crossover because there's just other things to worry about and read about at the moment when it comes to everything that's been going on in the world of pro wrestling. Nevertheless, it shouldn't dampen the excitement of this AEW and Impact Wrestling crossover. And as I mentioned previously, as we get into January, as we come into the new year, obviously we're only a couple of weeks now away from Kenny Omega's debut match inside of an Impact Wrestling ring. And as I've mentioned several times, in my opinion, this isn't going to be the last time we see Kenny Omega compete inside of an Impact Wrestling ring. Now, it was reported, of course, a couple of weeks ago that Kenny Omega has filmed a lot more content with Impact Wrestling. I believe that was done in Jacksonville, Florida. And the purpose of that was to be inserted into future episodes of Impact Wrestling. So I'm assuming that whatever we're going to see next week in terms of Impact Wrestling on AXS TV is going to be part of that content that Kenny Omega filmed several weeks ago with Don Callis and with the Good Brothers. We know that Kenny Omega won't be having a match until Hard to Kill, but it looks like that won't be his only match inside of an Impact Wrestling ring. It's been reported by numerous sources and outlets such as Dave Meltzer, people close to AEW like Meltzer, that Kenny Omega is going to be having multiple pay-per-view matches for Impact Wrestling. Hard to Kill is just going to be the first of it. So as I've mentioned before, I still stick with my prediction for 2021 that Kenny Omega will win the Impact World Championship. At some point in 2021, I believe Kenny Omega will become the Impact World Champion. Now, I'm not like a lot of other people. I don't claim fake sources or false sources or insider information or anything like that. That is just a prediction from my point of view, but I do think that is going to happen. So, as I mentioned, with these year-end shows coming with Impact Wrestling, they've kind of just been the recap shows you would expect, best of year, end of year list, etc. Obviously, as things wind down for the holidays, Christmas, New Year, and all that. But now we're coming into January, now we're coming into 2021. Thank God this year is over, quite frankly. Nevertheless, as we're coming into January, we're going to continue this build to Hard to Kill. And Impact had a ton of momentum at the end of 2020. It's obviously slowed down because of these best of shows, but Impact had a ton of momentum heading into Hard to Kill, and there still is a lot of anticipation when it comes to the pay-per-view in January. And I myself am very much looking forward to this. In addition to the main event, we've got Knockouts Tag Team Championships being decided. We've also got Genesis 7 days prior, which has an I Quit match, has the Super X Cup tournament. There is a ton to be excited about when it comes to Impact Wrestling in 2021. Obviously, we've got people leaving the company, possibly people coming in as well. So it's a really exciting time, and it's a time when it comes to Impact that we don't really know that much that's going on. All that we know at the moment is that Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers and Don Callis are going to be part of the broadcast next week. Things are going to be getting back to normal next week, and I'm very much excited for it. So what else do we have that's announced for next week's show? Because in addition to Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers and Don Callis appearing, we also have a ton of other things to expect and be excited about for next week on Impact Wrestling on AXS TV. Of course, we've got the grudge match. We've got potentially the final match between Eddie Edwards and Sami Callihan. Now, I've mentioned my feelings about this before, in that I'm a fan of Eddie Edwards, I'm a big fan of Sami Callihan. I think Sami Callihan will re-sign with Impact Wrestling. I believe reports have come out that said that they expect Sami Callihan to re-sign with Impact Wrestling. Of course, his contract does expire at the end of the year, but I think, like most people, I fully expect Sami Callihan to re-sign. When it comes to this Eddie Edwards-Sami Callihan feud, because it's been an on and off again feud for what? At this point, gosh, 2-3 years at this point, and in my opinion, I felt that I didn't really want to see it revisited again, because they'd done all they needed to do, and then over the summer, because it kind of felt like Eddie Edwards, after he lost the World Championship to Eric Young, they needed something for Eddie Edwards to do at Bound for Glory, because let's face it, he was just the world champion. It was a short title reign, but he needed something to do. It was the same with Callihan and Shamrock, and I think the Impact officials felt, look, if we add in Ken Shamrock to this, it kind of freshens up the story, because Ken Shamrock wasn't involved in the storyline previously when you had the original incident with the baseball bat, etc. And they've played off of that in this storyline once again, with Ken Shamrock beating Eddie Edwards at Bound for Glory. You had Sami Callihan once again attack Eddie Edwards' eye and try and re-injure him. They always do good matches. They always do good content when they're together. My issue is with it is that we've seen it before. We have seen it before, and it just feels like to me that it's sort of reheating the leftovers of something previously done. And don't get me wrong, I have no doubt that the match next week will be very, very good. I have no doubt that the blow-off in this feud will be very good. It's just a case of, I'm glad it's probably happening next week on Impact, because I think, one, it is a draw. I know Sami Callihan calls himself the draw, but it is a draw to get people excited, and a big match to draw people in for that first week of 2021. I think obviously the AEW involvement is going to be a much bigger draw in getting people to watch next week as we go into Hard to Kill later on in January. But it is a draw to get people watching next week, and I'm sure the match will be fine. But at this point, I want to see them go in different directions. I want to see them go in different directions. What those directions are, only time will tell. But I just feel that this feud, they've got everything, every last drop out of this feud that they can. And I'm the first to criticize other companies when a feud goes on too long, even if they do stuff in between and they go back to it. I just feel that this one, it needs to be given a rest. These two have so much history, and I suppose these two could fight forever in various forms, but it's time to go different ways. It's time to try something new. Let's do something new. Let's watch something different. And I have no doubt the match will be good, but I'm just a bit finished with it, to be honest. So in addition to Eddie Edwards versus Sami Callihan, we also have Impact Wrestling Knockouts Tag Team Championship Tournament semi-final action as Nevaeh and Havoc face off against Jazz and Jordynne Grace. Now, what's really interesting about this one, of course, is that Jazz, her plan was to retire in 2020. That's why it was surprising that she teamed up with Jordynne Grace in the first place, because she dropped the NWA World Women's Championship. She was planning on having a retirement tour during 2020. She mentioned that her reasons for retiring were mental, physical issues, just age. I think she had problems with her knees as well, and she said, you know what, it's just time for me to call it a day. Then her plan was to do like most people do on the independent scene, have a retirement tour. I don't know how many dates that would have been, but she would have appeared at various independent shows, face a list of opponents she wanted to face. Most of the time, I guess, put them over and then ride off into the sunset. Now, obviously, due to the pandemic, that couldn't happen this year. Like a variety of things, it was cancelled, and Jazz just thought, well, I guess that's me done, I'm retired. Now, she's done these select appearances with Impact Wrestling, teaming up with Jordynne Grace to be part of this Knockouts Tag Team Championship tournament. And what is interesting now when it comes to Jazz is that she is now accepting bookings for a 2021 retirement tour. So thankfully, it looks like Jazz is going to get the retirement tour that she wanted and deserves. Jazz she's a legend. She's a legend in the pro wrestling industry. A complete badass. One of my favorite female competitors ever. Really enjoyed her run in WWE and her work in ECW as well. Is legit. She could beat the hell out of anyone. So I'm glad to see that she's getting the retirement tour that she would like, and I hope that comes to fruition next year. As far as the match, I mean, I'll probably do my prediction closer to the time. I did speculate before, though, that I did think Jazz and Jordynne Grace would get to the final at Hard to Kill, because that's the story that makes the most sense. In Jazz and Jordynne Grace getting to the final and then losing in that final, they would lose that final, and then Jordynne Grace would turn heel and just beat the hell out of Jazz, the legend, and force her into a retirement of her own, and then we can have this badass version of Jordynne Grace. I'm still going to probably go with that, but anything can happen, right? Anything can happen. As far as other things that have been announced for next week, we've got Blake Christian and Casey Navarro facing Ace Austin and Crazy Steve. Of course, this is to preview and hype the Super X Cup tournament that is taking place at Genesis 7 days prior to Hard to Kill in 2021. I'm excited, of course, to see Ace Austin back in the ring. You got X Division Star of the Year. He's my prediction to win the Super X Cup. I'm just glad to see him back on TV, since he hasn't been on TV for so long because creative doesn't have anything for him. I hate those lines. Nevertheless, it's great to see see that he'll be back. It's great to see that he's going to be featured in. He's one of the best wrestlers that Impact Wrestling has, and it's great to see this renewed focus on the X Division. It's been something that I've been preaching and wanting to see for a while. Let's get a renewed focus on the X Division. Let's get it back to what it was in its prime. The talent is there. Maybe they do need to bring some more talent in, but it's more about the focus. Get the X Division back in the main events. Let's start doing big things with it again, and I think this renewed emphasis on the X Division is shown with the return of the Super X Cup tournament at Genesis. So I'm very excited to see that. As I mentioned, Ace Austin's my prediction to win the whole thing, so I would assume, hopefully, that Ace Austin would win that next week as well. Given that he was the X Division Star of the Year, given he's in the Super X Cup tournament, logic would suggest he's going to be featured in when it comes to the X Division in 2021. I still really want to see matches with Ace Austin and Chris Bay for the X Division Championship. I want to see a long feud and maybe something really special. I think that could be a lot of fun. We know Chris Bay is in the X Division Championship match at Hard to Kill along with Manik and Rohit Raju. So who knows? We could be seeing some really exciting stuff when it comes to the X Division in 2021. We also have announced next week Eric Young and Joe Doring facing Cousin Jake and Rhino. Of course, this is to build the faction for Eric Young and Joe Doring, and along with Cody Deaner as well, who seemingly has joined the faction too. And I think it's a placeholder for when Heath eventually returns to action. He'll be feuding with this Eric Young faction. Glad to see that Eric Young is still doing something. Sometimes the biggest problem in the smaller companies is that once someone is out of the main event scene, they kind of fade off into the wilderness, and that would be a crying shame for Eric Young, considering the work that he's done for Impact Wrestling in 2020. Since he returned to the company back in July, there was a period of time where he was just the hottest thing going in that company. He was the biggest heel, he was the best character, he was doing the best work. That culminated with him winning the Impact World Championship. That culminated in a main event appearance for Bound for Glory, defending that Impact World Championship against Rich Swann. That's just testament to the work that Eric Young did in 2020. So I would have been really disappointed if Eric Young, after losing the title, would have faded off into the background. He kind of did briefly, but now, of course, he's building this stable, so there are plans for Eric Young going forward, and I'm glad, because he is such a fantastic worker. He can do anything and everything, and he still has so much to give, so I'm very excited to see what he does in 2021. And finally, we also have TNA World Heavyweight Champion Moose versus Matthew Palmer in a 3-minute challenge. Of course, this is to hype and promote Moose's I Quit match with Willie Mack, which is taking place at Genesis. I still think at this point, Moose will face Rich Swann at some point for the Impact World Championship. They have been planting the seeds for this match, for this story for so long. Coming out of Bound for Glory, even at the end of Final Resolution, the reason that Moose is actually feuding with Willie Mack in the first place is to eventually get to Rich Swann, because Willie Mack is the best friend of Rich Swann. That makes all the sense in the world, right? The only issue is now is that we've got this AEW and Impact Wrestling relationship, and Kenny Omega has been inserted into that picture, and where does Moose fit in? I still could potentially see Kenny Omega winning the title from Rich Swann and maybe facing Moose in the future, or maybe we have Moose versus Rich Swann at some point, maybe on an Impact Wrestling or something like that. It isn't taking place at Genesis, and it isn't taking place at Hard to Kill. That's what we know so far. But I do think the ending of this TNA World Heavyweight Championship storyline is eventually Moose will face whoever is the Impact World Champion, and they will unify those titles. I think that's always been the plan, but plans do change, so we'll have to wait and see when it comes to that. A bit of other news I wanted to talk about when it comes to Impact Wrestling today was the year-end awards, because over the last 2 weeks, as I mentioned, these past 2 shows on Impact Wrestling, they've been talking about the year-end awards, and they've done basically half one week, half the other week. This week we saw Match of the Year and Moment of the Year revealed. But I want to go through all the award names and just say my quick thoughts on them. Of course, Tag Team of the Year went to the North, which is expected. Longest reigning Impact World Tag Team Champions in history. Doesn't look like Ethan Page is going to be with the company that much longer. Josh Alexander, of course, is staying because his contract expires in 2022. Signed a 3-year deal in 2019, but absolutely right call. They are the tag team of the year, and well, they're the best tag team in Impact Wrestling to this day, and it's just a shame we won't see them team up for a while because Ethan Page looks to be leaving. When it comes to Knockout of the Year, went to Deonna Purrazzo, who of course is the current Knockouts champion. That was a tough one. That could have gone to many people. It could have gone to Deonna Purrazzo, obviously. It could have gone to Jordan Grace as well. I've enjoyed the work Taya Valkyrie's done this year as well. There's a variety of people. Even Rosemary was factored in, maybe not to the Knockouts Championship, but especially for the other stuff, whether it's Wrestle House or the Johnny Bravo stuff. Obviously could have gone to Su Yung as well. Sue Young was factored in as well this year. So there was a lot of people it could have gone to this year, but I guess Deonna Purrazzo is the current Knockouts Champion, and since she came in back in May, I believe it was, she has been absolutely exemplary. And this is why I was so happy for Deonna Purrazzo to also win Wrestler of the Year, because it proved my point that I've been saying time and time again when it comes to Impact Wrestling. The reason their Knockouts division thrives and succeeds is because they put them in the position to thrive and succeed. The Knockouts division is the cornerstone. It is a pillar of strength in Impact Wrestling. Why? Because Impact Wrestling gives them the opportunity to thrive and succeed. It's the problem and difference between AEW and Impact Wrestling. AEW, you have one women's match per show. It's about 5 minutes in length, and it's put in a difficult position of the show. Impact Wrestling, you have multiple women's matches, multiple women's storylines. Sometimes they main event the TV show, they main event TV events, they main event pay-per-views. If you put your talent in a position to succeed and thrive, they will. It's got nothing to do with the talent in AEW or Impact Wrestling. The difference between Impact Wrestling and AEW when it comes to the women's division is that it's just booking philosophy. It's booking philosophy. And that's why I was so glad to see that Deonna Purrazzo not only got Knockout of the Year, but she also got Wrestler of the Year. Would you see that happen in AEW? No, you just wouldn't, of course. Finisher of the Year was the Magic Killer, which went to the current World Tag Team Champions, the Good Brothers. I mean, as far as a finisher, it's okay. I don't know if it's the best finisher in Impact Wrestling, but I suppose some of these awards, sometimes they're kind of legitimate, but sometimes they're to further the storyline, and I think this was just to further the storyline, give an award to the Good Brothers, because arguably they were the biggest signing of Impact Wrestling in 2020. One to watch in 2021 went to Chris Bay. Absolutely agree with that. I'm a huge Chris Bay fan. You know, if you've watched any of my videos here on the channel, massive Chris Bay fan. I think he's unbelievably talented. I think he can be the top babyface in Impact Wrestling in the future. They just need to give him more promo time, keep putting him in those main events. The year that this guy has had since signing with Impact earlier this year, the development and how much he's grown and thrived and succeeded is just huge. And that's just 1 year. That's just 1 year. So think what he can do in 2-3 years. This guy, he truly is the one to watch in 2021. But he's also the one to watch going forward, because he is an unbelievable talent. The sky truly is the limit with Chris Bay. And I mentioned I want to see him face off against Ace Austin. I think eventually we could see main events for the Impact World Championship, which is a babyface Chris Bay versus a heel Ace Austin. They're just that good, and they absolutely are the future of Impact Wrestling, if Impact, of course, can keep them. Now, obviously, it was revealed last night on Impact Wrestling on AXS TV, the moment and match of the year. The moment of the year was the Slammiversary 2020 pay-per-view debuts and returns, so that included the likes of Heath, EC3, Eric Young, the Good Brothers, etc. And match of the year went to the main event of Slammiversary, which was Eric Young versus Rich Swann versus Eddie Edwards versus Ace Austin versus Trey Miguel. The match of the year one, is it necessarily the match of the year? That's a tough one. I really, genuinely, I think the Iron Man match between Jordan Grace and Deonna Purrazzo on Impact Emergence was one of the better matches of this year. It was fantastic. And if you want to go right the way back to the start of the year, you know, you've got even Tessa Blanchard winning the World Championship was a good match. Sami Callihan winning the World Championship also, good match. So there is a lot that people almost forget about this year, especially the first half of the year, or especially pre-pandemic when it comes to Impact Wrestling. Is that the best match of the year? I don't know. Moment of the year, I would definitely say the Slammiversary 2020 pay-per-view. It was the turning point, to use a pay-per-view pun for Impact Wrestling. The show was just fantastic. It had, not only was the show great, but it had this momentum and just had this big-time feel about it. It was trending worldwide. It was really the point in time that Impact got a lot of momentum this year and really started to build up this momentum that's led into 2021. It was a massive turning point for them, it just was. So I agree that it was the moment of the year. And finally, what I want to talk about as well is that the Knockouts Championship match for Hard to Kill has been confirmed, as Impact Knockouts champion Deonna Purrazzo has finally accepted Taya Valkyrie's challenge for an Impact Knockouts Championship match at Hard to Kill in January. Obviously, Taya Valkyrie challenged Deonna Purrazzo last week, but the match wasn't confirmed until last night. As I mentioned, Hard to Kill will take place on Saturday, January 16 from Skyway Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Really excited for this one. What is curious about this match, and I guess the undertone of this match, is Taya Valkyrie's contract. We know that Taya Valkyrie's contract is expiring soon. Whether or not it actually expires at the end of the year or at some point in January remains to be seen. As I mentioned before, even if it does expire at the end of the year, we know Impact Wrestling have taped all of the content up to Hard to Kill weekend. Therefore, it would only be one extra appearance for Taya Valkyrie if she were to leave Impact Wrestling. And I do think that possibly could be the case here. Now, I don't think Taya Valkyrie is going to win the Knockouts Championship. I think the boat is fully behind Deonna Purrazzo in this one. And look, she just won Wrestler of the Year and Knockout of the Year. Impact are very much pushing Deonna Purrazzo hard right now. And I think this could be a case of, if Taya Valkyrie does leave the company, it's a case of putting the champion over strong on the way out. Taya Valkyrie is the longest reigning Knockouts champion in the company's history. Therefore, putting over Deonna Purrazzo in a big way once she's leaving the company, doing the favours, the time-honoured tradition, I think works for both parties there. So I still wouldn't be surprised if Taya Valkyrie leaves. I don't see this match being announced as an indication that Taya Valkyrie is going to stay. I think her future, like a lot of people's future in Impact Wrestling, is up in the air right now. So I don't agree with the people that say, oh, this is a sign that she's staying. I don't think so. It could just be one extra appearance. Nevertheless, it's going to be a phenomenal match. Two of the best female wrestlers, two of the best wrestlers in general in Impact Wrestling, in Deonna Purrazzo and Taya Valkyrie. Could be an absolute show stealer, even though they've got a tough main event to go up against. I think this one is going to be a lot of fun to watch. I really do. So, of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on some of the stories we've spoken about when it comes to Impact Wrestling today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, WWE, AEW, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So get involved with the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak for you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.